welcome to the MLK event. I'm so happy you guys are here. Okay, so with my BSU, we're going to do our chant like we do all the time for our BSU meetings. Okay, so repeat after me. And I need them to hear you guys on the fourth floor. Okay? Okay. All right. We are the BSU.
The BSU.
We are
Black excellence.
Black excellence.
Black excellence. Black excellence.
All right now. Okay. Love it. All right, so I need you all, if you're in here, you guys are repping the BSU. Feel free to leave if you like, okay? But I need you all to please stand for our Black National Anthem. Please stand, guys. You can sing along if you want, but you don't have to. Voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of
I like this part right there. Come on.
a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing the song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day. Let us march on till victory is won.
Let me have something to it.
Please be seated. Now, can I please have Miss Naima Salim up here, please, to read the first quote?
Okay. This quote reads, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And what that quote means to me is that just because something doesn't affect you doesn't mean it's not an issue. It's your responsibility to speak up when you see injustices, especially in our community. How is it fair that injustice can happen in one place but not affect everyone else? Not speaking up is just as bad as not. It's just as bad as being a part of the injustice. So, as a Black person, whenever you see injustice, you should speak up for others to help improve our community.
Thank you so much, Miss Salim. All right, next up, can I have Miss Fatmata Ball, please?
All right. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. To me, this poem means that positivity will always outweigh and be greater than darkness and light. And hate.
Thank you, Miss Fatmata. Next up, we have Miss Brianna Yule.
The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments. of convenience and comfort, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. What MLK meant is character and strength will help you overcome your challenges, even when it gets tough and very hard moments.
Great job. And last but not least, we have Miss Ajaya Johnson.
In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. To me, this poem means silence equals white violence. White people are supporting the fight, but in private. They don't advocate like they should. At the end of the day, mistreatment of African Americans from white people doesn't matter as much as white people who halfway support the cause.
Hey, Mr. Jaya. All right. Now we're going to have some reading of Dr. King's speech, I've Been to the Mountaintop. So can I have Miss Michaela Goings come up here, please? And also, Kiana, you can come up as well. Fatmata. Brianna.
And as I was looking down, writing, and I said yes. And the next minute, something fell. I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. And that blade had gone through, and the x-ray revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that punctured, you drown in your own blood. And that's the end of you.
It came out in the New York Times that the next morning that if I had sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter and I'll never forget it. It said, "Dear Dr. King, I'm a 9th grade student at White Plains High School," she said. "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering, and I read that if you had sneezed, you have died. And I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you did not sneeze." And I want to say tonight, I want to say that I'm happy that I didn't sneeze. Because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960, when the students all over the South started sitting in the lunch counters. And I know that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963, when the black people of Birmingham, Alabama, arose the conscience of this nation and brought into the being of the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to tell the American about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been down in Selma, Alabama, been in Memphis to see the community rally around these brothers and sisters who are suffering. I'm so happy I didn't sneeze.
And then I got to Memphis, and some began to say the threats, or talk about the threats that were out and what would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers.
Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop, and I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. and he's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. And I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. My eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
While sitting there autographing books, the minute black woman came up, the only question I heard from her was, "You, Martin Luther King?" And I was looking down writing and I said, "Yes." The next minute I felt something beating on my chest. Before I knew it, I had been stabbed by this demented woman. I was rushed to Harlem Hospital. It was a dark Saturday afternoon. That blade had gone through and the x-rays revealed that the tip of the blade was on the edge of my aorta, the main artery. And once that's punctured, you're drowned in your own blood. That's the end of it. It came out in the New York Times the next morning that if I had merely sneezed, I would have died. Well, about 4 days later, they allowed me, after the operation, after my chest had been opened and the blade had been taken out, to move around in the wheelchair in the hospital. They allowed me to read some of the mail that came in, and from all over the states and the world, kind letters came in. I read a few, but one of them I will never forget. I had received one from the president and the vice president. I've forgotten what those telegrams said. I received a visit and a letter from the governor of New York, but I've forgotten what that letter said. But there was another letter that came from a little girl, a young girl, who was a student at the White Plains High School. And I looked at that letter and I'll never forget it. It said simply, "Dear Dr. King, I am a 9th grade student at the White Plains High School." She said, "While it should not matter, I would like to mention that I'm a white girl. I read in the paper of your misfortune and of your suffering. And I read that if you had sneezed, you would have died. I'm simply writing you to say that I'm so happy that you didn't sneeze. I want to say tonight that I too am happy that I didn't sneeze, because if I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1960. And students all over the South started sitting in at lunch hours. And I knew that as they were sitting in, they were really standing up for the best in the American dream, and taking the whole nation back to those great wells of democracy, which were dug deep by the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been around here in 1962. And Negroes in Albany, Georgia, decided to straighten their backs up. And whenever men and women straighten their backs up, they are going somewhere, because a man can't ride your back unless it is bent. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have been here in 1963. Black people, Birmingham, Alabama, aroused the conscience of this nation and brought into being the Civil Rights Bill. If I had sneezed, I wouldn't have had a chance later that year in August to try to tell America about a dream that I had had. If I had sneezed, I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Thank God Dr. King did not sneeze, okay? Next we have, can you guys put the lights on for us up here, please? Now we have Ms. Nyasia McIntosh and Renija Jackson, and also this Tyra Jacob come up here as well.
Thank you, Dr. King. Dr. King, we thank you for taking a stand and for fighting injustice all through the land. We appreciate you implementing your nonviolent plan, seeking equality for every man. Changes have come that have benefited many, and the challenge remains.
To leave out not any. The struggle continues to make it clear that everyone's rights and freedoms are there. We may never forget to honor your dream and seek those idols, no matter how hard it may seem. We look to your example and leading the way to a much brighter future and a much better day.
Dr. Martin Luther King was a man of great strength. He preached about love in a peaceful way. He helped bring about change through speeches and marches. Thousands came to listen to the words he had to say. Through non-violent acts and love of mankind, he showed the world how to keep injustice away. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., you left the world too soon, but your teaching will always stay, and we will always be thankful for the path you showed us to a better way.
Thank you, Tyra. I just put Tyra on the spot. She wasn't prepared for that poem, but she did it anyhow. Thank you so much. Ms. Miles, can you turn on the lights, please? Thank you.
Dr. King's efforts didn't go unnoticed. He was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, which had a monetary value of $54,600. Dr. King later donated the money to the Civil Rights Movement.
Despite all the challenges of being
AUX mode. 1, 4, 1, 2, 6.
surveillance 24 hours a day, and having his phone and home wiretapped. Dr. King never allowed anyone to discourage or turn his mission around.
Dr. King had many brushes with death. The first incident happened when he was 12 years old. He disobeyed his parents and went to a community parade and he was supposed to watch his little brother as instructed by his parents. Martin's little brother was sliding down a banister and knocked his grandmother unconscious. Soon after the accident, the grandmother suffered a fatal heart attack. The two incidents were unrelated, but Martin was devastated and felt guilty, which led him to attempt to jump from a two-story building.
Another incident in particular occurred on September 20th, 1958 at the Harlem bookstore. Dr. King had a book signing, and that is when a 42-year-old woman, Izola Curry, who suffered from a mental illness, yelled and stabbed Dr. King in his sternum with a letter underneath. The stabbing was so severe that he needed emergency surgery to save his life. The doctor said that if Dr. King had sneezed just once, he would have died.
In 1974, Dr. King's mother was killed violently. Mrs. Alberta King and the deacon were shot and killed in their own church by a deranged gunman. The gunman was aiming for Dr. King Sr., but the bullet hit Mrs. Alberta King instead while she played the church's organ. The assailant, Marcus Wayne Chenault, received a life sentence for his heinous acts.
Many of King's nonviolent marches ended violently because the city police and agitators would sick their dogs, tear gas, throw rocks and bottles, attack and spray fire hoses on demonstrators. But the march from Selma to Montgomery was the most violent. This march was known as Bloody Sunday because many of the marchers were severely beaten and hospitalized. Fortunately, Dr. King did not attend the Bloody March. However, he vowed to return to Selma, which he did with his loyal followers. Dr. King instructed his followers to respond to the violence by turning their backs to the angry crowd and state troopers and kneel in prayer. This risky act led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Dr. King accomplished a lot over the years, but his battle was not over. Dr. King was commissioned to lead a protest for the Memphis sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. He was due to speak at the Mason Temple. Dr. King was under the weather, so he decided to stay at the motel to get some rest. His partners told him to stay back and they will greet the crowd and deliver the speech on his behalf. Hundreds came out in a severe thunderstorm to see Dr. King. The crowd in the temple was so full of energy, the crowd was so anxious to see Dr. King, they started shouting his name. Dr. King's partners had no choice but to call him to the temple. He came to the temple and shook the crowd with his prophetic, electrifying speech. I've been to the mountaintops.
The promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know the names. And we as a people will get to the promised land.
Dr. King was struck down with an assassin's bullet in 1968 at the age of 39 as he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. The assassination of Dr. King ignited riots all across the country. Thousands, including political leaders, dignitaries, sports figures, and entertainers came out to pay their last respect to Dr. King. Thousands watched as Dr. King's casket was processioned through the streets pulled by 2 mules. Many watched as Dr. King was laid to rest. The manhunt to find the assailant took 2 months. James O. Ray was convicted for the killing of Dr. King and sentenced to 99 years in prison. Although James Earl Ray was charged with the crime, many feel that James O. Ray didn't act alone, which led to a conspiracy theory for the assassination of Dr. King.
Today, it's hard to imagine what it would be like not having the right to vote, sit where you want on the bus, or living under laws that overtly and blatantly discriminate against you and your family because of the color of your skin. Believe it or not, the U.S. was once full of open and intense venom and hatred. Even though we made some progress, there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. Today, we stand on the shoulders of great warriors and freedom fighters. We bear the fruits of their labor. Dr. King's legacy will never die. We should never forget that he gave his life so that we will not have to endure the pain and suffering in the same way that we once had to endure. Dr. King's legacy lives on in all of us.
Today I want to emphasize Alfred Daniel King, who was A.D. King's, and he was Martin Luther King's brother. And it's unknown to a lot of people that he had a brother, and I just learned myself too. But he was a father, brother, pastor, and husband, and the youngest son in the King family. And he was the brother of notable Dr. Martin Luther King. He's often looked over in history because of how prominent his brother was. And his death occurred shortly after his brother's on July 21st, 1969. Although it's declared as an accident, it's speculated that he was unjustly murdered. It's unknown that when Dr. King was on the front lines fighting injustice, his brother A.D. was right there next to him. He was a part of several civil rights efforts like getting arrested for protesting, participating in sittings, and organizing civil rights events. He was loyal to his brother MLK and the principles of nonviolence, and he felt strongly about advocating for equal rights and voting access. Today it's important that we recognize A.D. King and how he was an activist in the fight for civil rights too.
In the shadows of his brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A.D. King was on the front line of all the historic demonstrations during the 1960s. He was jailed along with his brother and other followers during protests in the South. A.D. King was a firm believer in civil rights. He was a true grassroots people person. He was a fearless leader, a son, a father, and husband. He was a modest man, did not seek to be the center of attention. So we asked the question, what really happened to him? A.D. King was found dead 15 months after the assassination of his brother, Dr. King, in a swimming pool. There was a mystery surrounding his death. Why was he left out of the history books? Why wasn't there any media coverage about it? Why didn't we know Dr. King? But who or what was responsible for keeping this history from us? Let's rewind to get a clearer picture.
A.D. King was born Alfred Daniel Williams King on July 30th, 1930, to Reverend Martin Luther King Sr. and Mrs. Alberta King.
He was the youngest sibling of the King's family. Most notably, he was Dr. Martin Luther King's younger brother.
He married his sweetheart, Naomi Ruth Barber, in 1950. They had 5 children. A.D. assisted his father as a co-pastor at Ebenezer Baptist Church. A.D. later went to pursue his bachelor's degree from Morehouse College in 1959. He eventually left Ebenezer and became the pastor of Mount Vernon First Baptist Church.
In 1960, A.D. joined his brother in the fight for freedom and justice. A.D. and Martin were arrested and jailed, along with other protesters, during the lunch counter sittings. He organized and led many civil rights activities, such as the Poor People's Campaign, Birmingham Campaign, the Selma demonstrations, along with many others.
Later, A.D. became pastor of First Baptist Church in Birmingham, Alabama, where he led the Birmingham Campaign. The Birmingham Campaign was a series of protests sought to bring national attention against racial segregation in Birmingham.
A.D. King was very involved in the civil rights movement. A.D. was also very loyal to his brother, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he believed in his principles of nonviolence. A.D. would go on any march that Dr. King asked him to attend, and he would be on the front line. A.D. strongly believed in the movement and fighting for voting and equal rights.
On May 11, 1963, the day before Mother's Day, A.D. was in the bedroom working on his sermon when he received a premonition that something evil was outside. The feeling was so intense that it led A.D. to walk to his front door to look outside. He then discovered that what he was feeling was too eerie to the point he vacated himself and his entire family outside. As they were headed outside, a second bomb exploded. A.D. and his family were able to escape the home before being killed.
I had prepared my dining room table with all of my finery and getting set for, Mother's Day the next day, and was feeling good, about the preparations and everything. And my husband was back in the bedroom working on his sermon. And so after I had finished decorating the table and all, I went and I sat in the living room on my sofa, and there was a picture window directly in front of me. So I was just sitting there, and it was about 11 o'clock in the night, 11 o'clock. And I was just sitting there, just meditating and enjoying the quietness. And all of a sudden, I looked at my picture window, and I noticed it had begun to crack. I didn't hear anything, I didn't see anything, but I noticed my picture window began to crack. And simultaneously, my husband came up from the bedroom, and he came up and he opened the door, the front door to our home, and he looked up the street and down the street, and it was so quiet that you could hear a cotton ball falling. It was so quiet, And when he did that, he came over and took my hand. He said, Naomi, let's get out of here. He said, because it's too quiet about here. And by the time we got to the middle of our home, the second bomb hit.
In 1965, A.D. King moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where he became the pastor of Zion Baptist Church. A.D. formed the Kentucky Christian Leadership Conference. He continued to be active in the movement by marching for the 1968 campaign for an open house on ordinance. While in Kentucky, A.D. received many threats and his church office was bombed.
A.D. King and others boycotted the Kentucky Derby with the ultimate goal of creating fair housing policies for blacks in Louisville, Kentucky.
Danger was always lurking for the King family. A.D. was under constant threat for his involvement in trying to eliminate systemic racism and segregation. The threats became more intense after the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The white power structure felt threatened, and they were afraid that A.D. was next in line to continue his brother's legacy.
A.D. King was found by his son, Derek King.
I look out the bedroom, I see a body in the bottom of the pool. Once I concluded it was Dad, the other thing I looked at, he was in his underwear. So I come back up out the pool, waiting Vita up, tell her Dad is drowned. Then that's when the telephone started. She started calling whoever she started calling. I woke Al up. Things got chaotic, but I made sure that when they pulled his body out of the pool, I was there. I know what I heard, and I ain't gonna dispute nobody, I ain't gonna debate nobody. The emergency worker said, ain't no water in his lungs. He was dead before he hit the water. And I said, what?
Naomi King, his wife, was on a 2-week vacation in Jamaica with 2 of her children, along with Coretta Scott King and 2 of her children. A.D. was also with them on the trip to Jamaica. However, A.D. had to depart earlier to prepare for his Sunday morning sermon. When Naomi received the call on Monday morning that her husband had drowned.
I heard about the death of my beloved husband while in Jamaica, just ending a beautiful vacation where my husband, 2 of our children, Mrs. Coretta King and 2 of her children had just ended a beautiful vacation, 2-week vacation. And my beloved husband had left on Friday to come back to Atlanta to be in the pulpit on Sunday morning. So on Monday morning, while we were packing, getting ready to leave Jamaica, I received the call that my husband had drowned. When I got to Atlanta and deplaned, my first and only thought was to get straight to the funeral home and see my beloved husband, the body of my beloved husband. So I went straight to the mortuary and looked at my husband. When I got there, I just could not believe, first of all, that he was dead, he was gone. So I stood there, and then there was his body all covered with the sheet. So then I just pulled the sheet back so that I could look at him and see for myself, that he was not a breathing, living soul anymore. And as I looked at him, on his forehead there were bruises, and then at his neck, it was very dark and looked like there were like rings. It was very dark. And then I just could not believe what I was seeing, I just could not believe that. So in a state of shock, I just lost it.
At the time of A.D.'s death, there were many pivotal current events that captured the headlines, such as the moon landing, the ongoing investigation of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the preparation of the 1969 Woodstock. As a result, AD's death did not receive much attention. It's our responsibility to ensure that his legacy is acknowledged and continues.
What do you really think happened to A.B. King? Was his death an accident or a murder? You can suggest.
Martin Luther King Jr. believed in nonviolence. He did love his neighbor as himself. Because he was mortal, this belief was not a gift. It was a philosophy which grew from study, self-discipline, and prayer. As he achieved this way of life, so can I, and so can we all.
Is it? Okay. So I have a question for you all. Who knew about this information? Anybody? So nobody knew? So we all learned this today. This is why we need to learn our history, because they hide it. And this is why you need to be a part of the BSU. Because we don't know it. Nobody knew it.
Can we have our president, vice president, the entire board up on the stage, please? Let's give them a round of applause. They did such an awesome job. They represent for us. These are our 12th graders. They are leaving us. We have one more event and then they're gone, guys. I need you all in the audience to step up. I have some 6th graders coming through the links, 7th grade, and my 9th graders, okay? So if you want to be a part of BSU, please see me. We expect Black excellence, okay? What you see up here is Black excellence, okay? All right, so does anyone have any questions? Again, join the BSU. You will learn who you are, knowledge yourself, and learn to love yourself. Okay? Thank you all. The timing is perfect. It's 2012. Thank you all.